And welcome to another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Stables Mania. I'm Taylor Phillips along with Ed Smith. My opening statement, we just got a lot on our plate tonight. We've known another update from Keith Appling and another Dr. Robert Anderson victim. The Lions get a key linebacker, and the Tigers make a much needed move. A roster move. Ed, what is your opening statement?
My opening statement that in regards to the fact that we're now seeing more restrictions being lifted, the fact that now we can see more fans being able to get into Comerica Park to see the team, regardless of how they're doing right now. It is a very welcome sight to see for the team, for the city itself, essentially.
Yes. And before we get to those topics, we want to remind everyone that this show is sponsored by the Viget Sports mobile app, where great fans cover. Sign up with a referral code STABLES with a capital S, as you can see right there on YouTube and Facebook Live. For those listening on Spreaker, capital S, lowercase TABLES. Get 1,000 free VIG coins to start your VIG-IT account, socialize, and make your picks. So, like we mentioned before, let's get to our first update from ESPN. Former Michigan State Spartans men's basketball guard Keith Appling was charged this past Monday with first-degree murder in his fatal shooting incident with Clyde Edmonds at age 66 in Detroit, Michigan, on May 22nd, also separately charged with assault on May 2nd in Jackson, Michigan. But Keith Appling's argument with Clyde Edmonds was over just a handgun, and Appling shot Edmonds multiple times fatally before fleeing the scene, according to the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office. Appling's mother and the victim's wife are cousins. That's the devastating part of this whole situation, this whole story here. Now, Ed, we know that, I mean, either Keith Appling's going to plead guilty or just he might get a good lawyer or something like that. But no, I don't think he's going to get a good lawyer. No, that's not going to be the case. No way. He's going to plead guilty and face a hefty sentence. Now, we just don't know how long he'll spend time in prison. Longer than a year, I would assume, but not exactly how that would be. So, Ed, Appling and Edmonds were almost related to one another, and considering their mother and the victim's wife are Appling's mother and the victim's wife are cousins, like I mentioned before, and Appling does that to him due to an argument over a deadly weapon. That's just sickening.
It's what makes this essentially from a random senseless act of violence into what now appears to be a family tragedy. As you mentioned, Edmonds, the victim, was related to Appling by marriage, of course, with his wife being cousins with Keith's mom. So this is a horrible incident that hurts twofold when you consider the players that are in this situation. The fact that all this stemmed from a simple, dumb argument to begin with, an argument over, of all things, a gun, really speaks to how, again, this is all alleged, of course, but still it speaks to how what could have been in Appling's mindset if he decided to react to this nature or react to this degree, felt it was necessary to not only brandish a weapon, but also apparently take someone's life in the same go around. So a couple of things worth noting here. We don't know for certain whether or not Keith Appling is going to plead guilty or not. His arraignment, I believe, is going to be on Thursday. We'll know then what his next course of action is. If he were to plead guilty, I would believe it was because he was able to strike some sort of plea deal. Other than that, he'll probably plead not guilty, and his defense team will try to come up and say it came down to a situation where it might have been either Keith Appling or Mr. Edmond in this situation. Again, we'll see how that gets him with the jury, especially we consider Keith Appling's long list of past troubles and behavioral misdemeanors and whatnot. And the fact that he already had warrants out for him, bench warrants out for him in 2 different counties prior to this incident. Um, Another thing worth noting here, that Appling's girlfriend, Natalie Bannister, she was also involved in this for the fact that she drove Appling away from the scene of the crime. So because of that, she is also being charged as an accessory to the crime, as well as 1 count for lying to a peace officer. So given what we know about that, it wouldn't surprise me to see if we see Miss Bannister on the stand, either as a witness for the prosecution or the defense, and also whether or not that she will be willing to essentially save herself, even if it meant betraying her significant other, by taking a plea deal of her own to testify against Appling. That possibility is always there. But again, it's still too early in the process to see how things will go. We got to see, how the prosecution is going to present their case. Even though we may have a good idea, given by what Kim Worthy was stating from her office when this was announced. But you got to see what the defense is going to bring up to counteract that. So I still say this is a to be determined situation. First, let's get to the arraignment, see what Appling decides to plea, and then we can go on from there. But still, horrible, horrible situation all around.
Yeah, definitely, and we'll keep our eyes open on that story as it continues to develop. So, speaking of Michigan State Spartans men's basketball, head coach Tom Izzo promotes Doug Wojcik to assistant coach to replace Dane Fife and hires 5 former players to the program's administration. Former point guard and Northern Illinois Huskies coach Mark Montgomery as a recruiting coordinator, Austin Thornton as a video coordinator, Matt McQuaid as director of basketball operations, Garrett Brenningstew, never heard of that name, as director of operations and chief of staff, replacing former Spartan David Thomas, and Julian Stahl as director of creative video. Fife becomes an associate coach under head coach Mike Woodson, probably for
At Indiana.
Indiana. Thank you very much. So there's an update for you.
Well, if I could give my brief thoughts on that, if you would, I think this speaks a couple of things, especially when you consider the fact who was hired, what specific position. As for Wojcik, obviously, it's filling a vacancy, considering the fact that Dane Fife left for Indiana, as we all mentioned. But in terms of the former players that were added to these specific roles, Mark Montgomery named the recruiting coordinator. I think that could be one element that is not talked about enough, because we've seen what Juwan Howard and his staff has been able to do in Michigan in 2 years. They've completely been an absolute 180, or if you want to say, been a massive upgrade and improvement for what, as good as John Beilein could have been in terms of getting the players that he could get to come here. Juwan Howard has taken that next step and beyond. And if anything, that has taken the shine away, if you could say that, from Michigan State, because before that, they were able to still get some good players, quality players. But between that and seeing what Michigan has done, and also the fact that you're seeing more younger, up-and-coming high school talent may want to decide to either play overseas or decide to skip straight to the G League. That's always a possibility. Case in point, Imani Bates, the generally regarded best prospect for 2022, could be a potential #1 draft pick in the 2023 draft. He was a commit to Michigan State. Then he decommitted. So I think those reasons, the fact that, what Michigan has done in the recruiting game, they got the #1 recruiting class in the entire nation coming to them soon, what Juwan Howard has done, plus the decommitment of Imani Bates, I think it led to this decision for Mark Montgomery being promoted to recruiting coordinator. Now, Winston Thornton, video coordinator, I believe that regards to him being in charge of game tape, looking over the X's and O's, film for the team to study over and watch over for what they can strategize to improve upon, what they can do to attack that other team. As long as it doesn't turn into a New England Patriots situation, I'm fine with that. Matt McQuaid, director of basketball operations, I think it's just more so stuff that concerns, around the program, what to do to get the Brez, when they decide to allow more fans back into the Breslin Center. I think that sort of deal, that sort of shindig. David Thomas being replaced by Garrett, nothing much to say is that, the fact that he's being Izzo's chief of staff, that is the actual title of the job being here. I think just to make sure that, whatever advice that Coach Izzo may need or check on his well-being, if others may not be able to question it, this guy will be able to do so. And I think you got to take into consideration the timing of this news being announced, because in the span of a month or so, Roy Williams, he's announced his retirement. We just heard recently the big bombshell. Coach Mike Krzyzewski of Duke, he's going to be stepping down. He'll be retiring after this upcoming season. So when you factor all this together, it may be a hint of a sign of things to come that, hey, maybe Izzo is understanding that sooner or later the writing's going to be on the wall for him. And so he wants to get, the next, the succession line, if you want to call it that way, set up, have the tree, have the staff properly set up. So that way, when the post Izzo time does come, and it will come, trust me, it may come sooner than we all expect it to be. It was going to be making sure that the staff and the school and the program rather will not be in total free fall once that decision is eventually and inevitably announced. So all that is to take into consideration when you hear about this news, at least in my view, in light of the retirements of Roy Williams and Coach K.
Yeah. And Mike Krzyzewski is getting to be at that time. But for Izzo, that situation kind of reminds me in comparison of this Jeff Blashill thing, the writing kind of being on the wall after the firing of Dan Bilesma. What do you think?
Well, I don't know for certain. I think mainly Bilesma's problem, it was a multitude of things. Mainly, for example, his inability to help out with the power play. So, if anything, that led to him getting canned. And also, Eisman seemingly has more patience with Blashill. And again, this is a far different end or spot of the totem pole. Izzo is at a far different comparison situation, I feel, than what Jeff Blashill might be going through. Not the fact, also consideration, Izzo is accomplished. He just recently won a conference tournament title. So it's not like, yes, this season was very poor compared to the usual standards that Michigan State has gone through. But considering the fact that they were still able to make the tournament, and when you note that the team that they lost to in UCLA made it to the Final Four and were a buzzer beater away from potentially playing for the national championship, I think MSU's season, while disappointing as it is, there's still things to learn and take positive things from, to where you can apply it to a potentially better run next season. But still, I think Izzo recognizes that, listen, with seasons like this, there's going to become a time where, hey, I'm not going to be back next year, one of these days. So let's get things set up properly in motion now. I think Izzo had his thoughts also when he reacted to the news of Coach K's announcement of his retirement, saying how things are changing in this day and age for coaches like him in the system and whatnot. So I think he recognizes and realized that. So he wants to he wants to be at least one step ahead of the situation if it comes down, when it will come down to him having to decide, okay, enough's enough for me.
Yep. Good points. So that is the that is Michigan State Spartans men's basketball. Now to the Dr. Robert Anderson scandal. We have an update on that from Kirkland Crawford and David Jesse of the Detroit Free Press. Matt Schembeckler, the son of legendary Michigan Wolverines head coach Bo Schembechler, Matt reveals he is another one of the victims of sexual abuse by Dr. Robert Anderson. According to sources, they say that Bo Schembechler failed to protect Matt and probably others as well. So Bo Schembechler just failed to protect Matt for some reason. I'm not even going to reveal my knee-jerk reaction, which was like off the air in our private chat messenger. I'm not going to go there, but whatever the case may be, he failed.
Simply put, that is that. Forget the fact that that he allowed this apparently to happen to his own son. The fact he allowed this to happen to anyone, but especially his own son, regardless of what issues that he and Matt may have gone through. Because remember, Matt was not his biological son. When Bo, he adopted Matt when he and his wife got married in 1968. So again, there could be some long-stemming issues that go back farther than we realize. But this is, quite frankly, a horrible, even worse situation. You can probably make an argument this is worse than the situation at Penn State with Joe Paterno. You know what I mean? Because Schembeckler had to have known to at least some level of degree what Anderson was doing for all of these years. And now the fact that this is coming out, that you even allowed this to happen to one of your very own, one of the last people think you would ever try to let this happen to, and what, for the sake of some type of, I can't explain it and I can't defend it. I'm not going to go the Jim Harbaugh route. Like I said, I've said it and stated long before. If anything were to come out that showed that Bo Schembechler was participating in any type of activity that rivaled or was even worse than what Paterno was doing at Penn State, his legacy would be tainted, and rightfully so. As much as I would hate to see it happen, you got to recognize what's right is right and what is wrong is wrong. Not for the sake of, defending the school or trying to help win a football game. Not everything is like that, nor should it be like that in this world, period. There has to be limits, there has to be standards, there has to be accountability, and there has to be responsibility. And if Bo Schembechler failed in his responsibilities, then he should rightfully be criticized for it. And if you have to punish it by removing his name from the school building, whatever the case may be, then so be it. I don't know what else you can do to further punish it than I don't know what type of retroactive investigation could do to bring this up. I mean, there's already lawsuits. There's already, again, so much that's going on as is. I don't know if this could warrant some type of independent, some type of commission the way the Penn State scandal did, whereas Paterno was still alive at the time when all this went down. And when you consider the fact that Schembeckler's, he died, Don Canham, he died, Anderson is dead now. There's only so much you can do, only to recognize, listen, this is a horrible, awful situation that should not have happened. This is what the school should be saying. We are ashamed and disappointed that this had happened for far too long, that this happened to anyone, let alone someone that was this close to the Schembeckler family. But again, I understand it's a touchy subject, or pardon the pun here, or pardon the usage of the word here, but it is a thin line subject, and we recognize where some people may stand on either side of the debate. But to me, you got to call it where you see it. And frankly, if this is as true as I unfortunately think it is, Bo Schembechler failed. It's not an easy thing for me as a Michigan fan to admit. Someone who has admired and respected and looked up to the teachings and the lessons and the learnings of Bo and what he has inspired, not just as players, but also in fans for decades upon decades, even now after he's been gone for going on 15 years. So to hear this is just, it's saddening. It is heartbreaking, but at the end of the day, what's right is right, what's wrong is wrong. And this is an example of why those that are in power need to be held as accountable as possible. Unfortunately, we don't see enough of that. And frankly, as we can see here, we did not see enough of that back then. But that has to change. That simply has to change.
Yes, it does. And it is what it is. Bo Schembechler just absolutely failed. So that's it for that story, at least for now. Now to the Detroit Lions and our What's Your Great segment. The Lions signed former Green Bay Packers linebacker Reggie Gilbert. Terms not undisclosed yet. But Ed, what is your grade on linebacker Reggie Gilbert to the Lions?
If I ever have to give a grade on this, I would say C plus. The reason being, even though yes, you do add some depth at a position of need, and it potentially can help create competition at linebacker spot, knowing the players that you already have there, whether it be Trey Flowers, both the Akwara brothers, Batai, so on and so forth. It goes on and on, especially now that there's an impending change coming to the scheme of your defense, of your front seven. You're switching from a 4-3 to a 3-4. I get that, but there's some things that are worth noting in regards to Reggie Gilbert. Even though he's had some injury history, I believe he played only 2 games in 2017. He played a full season in 2018 when he was with Green Bay. Then he was, I believe, traded to the Tennessee Titans. He last played with them, only had a number of games with them in 2019. He's had a documented case of knee injuries. And with last year in 2020, he was on multiple practice squads. He was with the Cardinals. Then he made it to the Jags practice squad, got cut in December. So there's not much to go off of what he can bring in terms of production, and overall fit to the scheme of the team. Again, he doesn't have that many sacks. He's not known as someone that can rush the quarterback or do what he can in his scheme. But again, like I mentioned, it helps create competition, adds depth to a position of weakness at the linebacker spot. And who knows, maybe this is the good fit. This is the fit that he needed all along. But for those reasons, I'm going to give this a C, at no higher than a C plus.
All right, we'll give it just a C plus. We'll give it a C plus just to be more fair. So that is our What's Your Grade segment. Now the Tigers, who are tied up at 3-3 when they should have been up still 3-0. It's tied at 3. Mize had some run support, but blew that 3-0 lead by giving up a 3-run home run on top of the 6th inning with nobody out to Kyle Seager, but still finished that inning. The Tigers have designated outfielder Jacoby Jones for assignment. I know Jones has a great defensive mindset, but his offense was nowhere. Period.
Yeah,
that's why they cut him.
Absolutely no. That was the main reason. His struggles in Toledo, the fact he was hitting below 200. Even though he had an okay game in Toledo the other night, he had a bases clearing double. Still doesn't make up for the lack of production that we have seen now for quite some time. Adding the fact that there's more depth now in the outfield. This is coming from AJ Hinch's own mouth, by the way. It was clear to see that Jacoby is going to be the odd man out, considering the fact that the reason why this had happened was because Ryan Foley was added to the 40-man roster to fill in for Michael Fulmer, because Fulmer I believe it was due to a strain in his right shoulder. He's been placed on the 10-day injured list. You hope he comes back as well as he did before he left, because I thought he was producing very well out of the bullpen, much better than he did in terms of his recent years as a starter. So you hope the best from Fulmer, that he recovers well and comes back to a level of production that we saw before he got hurt. But when you factor in, again, the depth in the outfield, the struggles that Jacoby was having, and the fact that, someone had to be the odd man out when we brought in Ryan Foley to replace Michael Fulmer.
I think Jason Foley.
I saw Ryan Foley from what I was reading, but it could be Jason. Either way,
it is Jason Foley. He made his debut in Chicago last Saturday.
Okay, so it may have been Jason. My apologies if it was. I read Ryan for some reason, but either way, it speaks. It spelled everything out that you needed. Even though Jacoby Jones was a fan favorite for some, she certainly was a favorite for me. And like you mentioned, Taylor, he had solid defense. At the end of the day, you still need to hit. You still need to produce with your bat, and he was not doing that. So unfortunately, he has to get the DFA. Now, the thing is, he can come back to the team if he were to clear waivers and then become an unrestricted free agent. But again, it's still got a
free agent, meaning his unconditional release.
Yes,
other that, or just re-sign him to a contract, one way or another.
Yes, or he can choose to go to any team he wants. But again, that's still to see if he gets claimed first. If he's not, then he'll clear waivers and then he'll be the free agent, and then he can make his choice to go to whatever team he wants to go to. But that's if Detroit will want to have him back anyway.
Yep, that's true. That's just how this works.
Yep.
How about Eric Haas? His OPS is over 1,000. He's red hot. Yeah, and I voted for him 5 times for an All-Star nominee. He should be an All-Star.
He's been incredible this past week. He's had 6 home runs. I think he got the off night tonight for Jake Rogers, who, by the way, hit a home run himself, right? But as of late, Haas, in the last 6 games he has played, he has hit 6 home runs. He's got 7 already. He has at least 2 or 3 multi-home run games this season. He had one of them during this stretch of 6 homers in 6 games. And not to mention the fact, I believe he becomes the first Tiger since Miguel Cabrera in 2016 to hit at least 5 homers in a 4-game stretch. So I don't know what the hitting coaches have been talking to him about. I don't know what he's been seeing in the baseball, but keep it up. It gives good, lets you know that you have potential good depth at the catcher spot between not just Rogers, but also Haas as well. Rogers can provide more with the defense, and Haas can help you balance that out with the offense. So that's good to know that we're seeing some production on that level. It shows that there is some development going on at one of the key spots of the team. It may not get to the point of where it was with, say, James McCann or Alex Avila, but there is some promise there. As what we've seen tonight, or frankly in the past couple games as of late, it's an ebb and flow type of deal. You're seeing, I think, Akil Baddoo starting to get some of his early season rhythm and momentum back. You mentioned he had a single tonight. And he had a terrific running catch out in the outfield last night as well to make up for a bad play that he had earlier on. So I think Baddoo is understanding the highs and the peaks and the valleys of how a season as long as this goes. And I think in the long run, he'll be fine. It's just a matter of maintaining a certain level of consistency. And for the team as a whole, we at least saw some of that run support that we've been craving to see for a while. We saw them give Casey Mize that 3-run cushion. Unfortunately for Mize, this is where I say, he's a young man, and to sound like something out of Star Wars, he still has much to learn. So he's got to learn how to get those shutdown innings. You appreciate the fact that he can pump that fastball. He can fool you with a knuckle curve and have a good sinker. The fact that he got 6 strikeouts in 6 innings proves what kind of but he still has ways to go. And once you can learn the little things, like again, like when a team spots you 3 runs, you can't just get that back up the next inning. So little things like that, not giving up those leadoff doubles, because those leadoff doubles can kill you, as we saw here. Still ways to go, but you still really like what you see out of this kid. I made a joke to a couple of Twitter users saying that, before he gave up those 3 runs, there was noting and commenting on the lack of run support he was getting. And this even goes back to his start against the White Sox last week. He gave up 3 or 4 runs, still good enough start, but only got 1 run of support from this team. I just flat out stated, so it's like Justin Verlander all over again. You hope that's not the case, but at least it points out of how good of a talent that Casey Mize could be if he realizes his full potential, that not just me or the fans, but also the organization sees in him as well. So, good and bad from him tonight, but he still really liked what he see. It's still a case of whenever he's on, you stop and pay attention.
Yeah, kind of like Luke Skywalker. You mentioned Star Wars has much to learn. Luke Skywalker with his from his Jedi Master and stuff like that. But yeah, that's absolutely true. So with all that being said, still tied at 3, top 8. Kyle Funkhauser on the mound, setting 2 up and down here. Now it's time for our TMSTP Story Vault segment. An article from Jeff Moss of the Detroit Sports Rag, headlining "Oh, the Poor Billionaires." It's about Chris McCoskey, Tigers beat writer, and of course the owner, Chris Ilitch. So here we go. From Jeff Moss writes, "It was going to take a lot of time to get me out of retirement, but if anyone had the capacity to get me to care about the Detroit sports scene again, it surely was going to be Chris Officer Barb Rady McCoskey. So if you are glad to have DSR content back for the time being, you can thank him." Because Chris McCoskey on Twitter, and this was written on December 20th of last calendar year, 2020. Now on Twitter, Chris McCoskey at CM McCoskey tweeted, for those bitching about the Tigers' patient, opportunistic approach to free agency, if you owned a store and had no idea if or how long you'd be able to keep it open next year, or how many paying customers would be allowed in, would you fill shelves with the most expensive items, unquote. Yes, an alleged adult with a supposedly developed brain tweeted that out on Monday morning. I am not even sure where I should begin in dissecting this drivel, but how about by discussing the finances of this Ma and Pa family that owns the Tigers? The Ilitch clan. Back in 2017, when Mike Ilitch and his hairpiece called it a day, the family's net worth was north of $6 billion. At that time of that report from Forbes, the stock market was hovering around 19,800. The Dow Jones is currently at 30,074 as I type this. So how do you think that growth impacted the Ilitch's bottom line? I am guessing tons. Not to mention the Ilitch family's primary business is selling the public cheap pizzas. It's basically one of the only pandemic-proof ventures you could be lucky enough to own. In fact, here are the top 3 pandemic-proof operations. Number 1, terrible, inexpensive fast food pizza from Little Caesars, that is. Number 2, the senator of Georgia with a large stock profile and access to inside virus information. Number 3, personal protection equipment. Selling trash pies during a public health crisis is almost as fortuitous as my grandfather opening up a private insurance adjusting business a couple of years before the 1967 riots. And not only is the Ilitch family business thriving right now, it coincides with the Tigers having almost zero major budgetary issues other than Miguel Cabrera. With Jordan Zimmerman's disastrous $25 million a year contract coming off the books, the Tigers are projected to have a payroll of under $60 million for the 2021 season, which is right now, by the way. Yes, $60 million. Zimmerman, by the way, was released the past offseason. Chris Ilitch is even completely off the hook for deferred payments to Prince Fielder next year, which is now this year. This is a team that is now operating at a budget of 1/3 of what it was back in Mike's heyday, and the team is coming off 4 seasons where they have finished with the worst record in all of baseball twice, 3rd worst once, and 5th worst on another occasion. To put it politely, they've been total puke garbage since Trust Fund Chris took over for his dad, Mike. Mind you, this is also the same family that took $324 million in public funds from a bankrupt city to build a hockey arena with a promise of rejuvenating Midtown with commerce and housing developments that never materialized. Instead, a 78% African-American composed city was provided a bunch of parking lots and a restaurant owned by a racist Confederate flag-waving Trump hump dipstick named Bob Ritchie, who also, by the way, christened the new arena with several concerts. That's why Chris Ilitch is the parking lot king, by the way. While we all wait for Spencer Torkelson, Casey Mize, Matt Manning, Tarek Skubal, and Riley Green to develop, we've been served a puke sandwich by Ilitch as we've watched former stars like Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer finally win the World Series ring we were deprived of, the Tigers were, in this city for a variety of reasons. And not only has the product on the field been horrendous, Ilitch even went cheap when he allowed now Bally Sports Detroit to hire a moron in Matt Shepard, who keeps mailing some calls like per game or something like that from what I'm hearing on TV, who can't tell the difference between a Grayson Griner weak pop-up and a 500-foot moonshot by Aaron Judge. The Tigers have been an absolutely miserable experience for years while we've been patiently awaiting Al Avila's restocking the organization with young talent. And that plan is already at least 1 year behind schedule because he received barely anything of any value when dealing JV, Justin Upton, JD Martinez, Justin Wilson, and Al Avila's own son, Alex Avila, for young prospects back in 2017. And now, after years of tolerance for this trash product, this imbecile McCoskey is going to spin us a tale of woe for a billionaire family profiting from a pandemic, and is going to tard-splain to us why Ilitch couldn't possibly splurge for some big-name free agents after being promised that was the plan for 4 years. GTFOOH, you subservient asshat. The team has more holes in the lineup than Cabrera has illegitimate children, and the time to start adding pieces is now, when the rest of the league is potentially penny pinching. It's actually an unbelievable opportunity for Ilitch to fast-track the rebuild. In reality, may I add, while his primary source of income is thriving and others are struggling, he could ostensibly supplement the team's cheap young talent with bargains for star players he couldn't fathom a few years ago. As the old adage goes, where there is blood on the streets, you sign high-value targets. You sign high-value targets. Chris's dad, Mike, didn't wait until the franchise was overflowing with young prospects to resurrect the team. No, he added Pudge Rodriguez and Maglio Ordonez, Ivan Ivan Rodriguez and Manuel Ordonez, that is. And the team was finally revitalized after over a decade of embarrassing performances. After the bait and switch this grifter Chris Ilitch pulled when receiving over $300 million from the city of Detroit to build Little Caesars Arena, the least he owes us fans is a jumpstart on this sputtering rebuild. I mean, just look at the bill of goods that we were sold and then look at the soul-crushing reality. Because that's what the 1% do. They sell you on one thing and deliver something entirely different. Or as the great Anand Giridharadas likes to say, plutes are going to plute. And while the rich do that, they will always have a lapdog in the media like McCoskey telling you why it would be unthinkable for trust fund billionaires who won the sperm lottery to invest in a sports team that has deprived its fan base of any joy for over 4 seasons. Pick a lake, Chris, you insufferable billionaire bootlicker. All right, that's the end of that article. So, Ed, as we recap here, Chris Ilitch is just being Chris Ilitch, and guys, beat writers like Chris McCoskey actually cater to him. 100% full throttle. Sickening. Puke. Go ahead.
I mean, there's so much to dissect here. I'll just get this out the way. And again, the type of behavior that McCoskey shows in terms of defending up and trying to be, what was it, the press secretary for Chris Ilitch in this instance. It speaks to, frankly, how sorely lacking the media in this city, the sports media in this city is compared to other cities. Because, frankly, if you have a situation of where Chris Ilitch, the amount of money that he makes just from friggin' Little Caesars alone, not to mention the amount of money that his family's company has made and other ventures throughout the city of Detroit, and the fact that you gotten even more money from the city when you you didn't have to. You didn't have to get all that money. Okay, that was more a move done out of greed. You had all the funds and resources you needed to put up the stadium and this supposed district by yourself, but no, you wanted to grift the city out of money. So puke to you on that one. But when you have people like McCoskey that was defended, then it speaks to the state of sports media, frankly, media in general in this city, to where not enough people are taking this up to task to call for better accountability. Again, the theme that I was speaking of earlier in regards to Bo Schembechler, more accountability. I thought the HBO expose did a fantastic job. We need more of that around here locally. Case in point, I just saw a report on Channel 7 Action News at around 6 o'clock earlier this evening that gave us a quote-unquote update on how the district was going, and still not one single doggone building that was proposed in this supposed renovation and revitalization of of downtown and what. Not one building has been completed other than the friggin' Little Caesars Arena. That's it. Not one apartment, not one complex, not one residency. None of that has been fully renovated or properly completed in terms of construction. You still see flyers and coming soon signs, all that. It still looks barren. It's like that meme that you see on the internet of like the fancy sports car that's hidden underneath the awning, and right next to it is a old, raggedy, old and busted house. That's what it is. That's what the Little Caesars Arena has been in this downtown district. Shiny new toy, but still next to broken down garbage. So, and that's not a knock against the city. It's just calling calling it for what it is, seeing the reality of the situation, and the fact that people like Chris Ilitch have taken advantage of that and just to only fill his own pockets. It's sickening. And the fact that you correlate that with what he doesn't know or frankly chooses not to fully invest into what this city needs. Frankly, the sports teams are all we have to take away, to give us a distraction from the from the grind and the needless end of stress and BS that we see in the city day in and day out. That's just a fact. And the fact that you and your family own half of the teams in that niche, and what only one of them you're giving proper attention to because it is the Red Wings. What about the fact that, hey, your team also owns you also own the Tigers. Your dad did have a connection of sorts of wanting to be involved with the Tigers. Why do you think that literally the year after they lost 119 games, he signed the friggin' NLCS MVP, if not World Series MVP, from the Marlins to your team, and then a couple years after that, brought in a versatile all-star from the Chicago White Sox. And what do you know? What do you freaking do? What do you know who won the pony? They went to the World Series and shaped the course of their franchise's future, just like that. Okay, like the snap of Thanos' fingers, just like that. So now you mean to tell me, with the fact that you've already filled your money with your pockets with enough money just from the city, and the fact that you got a freaking tax write-off as well, you can't plug, well, I don't know, a good 8 figures or so into this team, into this franchise. Frankly, you're giving Eisman all the room that he needs in terms of how to properly build the Red Wings. Why can't you do that for the Tigers? Why can't you do that for the Tigers? And the fact that you have people propping you up like this, like McCoskey, it's sickening, and it makes the situation even more sad.
Yeah, if you can't do anything for the Tigers, just sell the hell out of them. Especially when you spend too much money on parking lots and expensive cars and just care about yourself.
And hotels that aren't even done.
Bingo. Even a possibility of selling the Red Wings, too.
Done. Nowhere near done.
Nowhere near done, it's right. Even a possibility of selling the Red Wings, too. And then if that happens, at least that happens, maybe a possibility of retiring Sergei Fedorov's jersey number 91 for a change. Right now, the Ilitches are still around. Yeah. So there you go. Yeah, that's Jeff Moss's article, Oh, the Poor Billionaires, on DetroitSportsRag.com. Visit DetroitSportsRag.com for all of Jeff Moss's provocative and comprehensive articles. Also follow him on Twitter at HowAboutIt91 for Sergei Fedorov's jersey number. Like I mentioned before, his screen name, Marlo Moss. So that is everything we've covered. Now for our closing statement. Ed, you go first.
The closing statement for me is simple. With the recent developments in Bo Schembechler and University of Michigan / Dr. Robert Anderson situation, it is another telltale warning and cautionary story of how you cannot continuously prop people up on a pedestal, because somehow, some way, there's going to be something that comes out that makes you wonder or question why you even did so to begin with. They are human just as you. They just have more power than you. But still, even if they have more power, there is a level of accountability that must be taken and must be upheld to people like this. Because when people in power are doing stuff like this, it makes you wonder of how deep the issue truly lies. And the fact that many people suffered and lives were changed and effectively ruined because of this. Because in some instances, if not many instances, one man and the fact that he was enabled by multiple people around him, those that were in position of power, and those that, at the very least, at the faintest idea, knew what was going on and did nothing to stop it. It's a sad tale all around, but it's a cautionary and needed tale as it speaks to how we need more accountability for people in power, period.
Yeah. My closing statement, Chris Ilitch is that example, and Chris McCoskey is just another stooge. Can't wait until Ilitch sells the Tigers and maybe the Red Wings as well, if that were to happen. So that's our closing statement. Before we go, I want to remind Oh, there we go. Yeah, I lost my camera sight for a minute, but anyway, yeah. Before we go, we want to remind everyone that this show and its episodes and segments are sponsored by the Viget Sports mobile app, where great fans cover. Sign up with a referral code STABLES with a capital S and the rest of the letters being lowercase, including the letter B as in billionaire right in the middle, as you can see on video. And in case you're listening on Spreaker in audio form, the Viget app, download it from the Apple App Store or Google Play and sign up with a referral code STABLES with a capital S. So Ed, excellent job as always. That concludes another fine episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Stables Media. We'll be back next week. For Ed Smith, and on behalf of Frank Basher, this is Taylor Phillips signing off. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DT2Phillips with 2 L's, and follow Ed Smith on Twitter and Instagram at EdSmith313. And follow our show on Twitter and Instagram at Michigan_Truth, and like it on Facebook. Thanks very much for listening, downloading, and sharing. And remember, the truth is out there. TTFN, ta-ta for now. Hit them with a high and we rest our case. Stay safe. Retire 91.